So you're here in London, having taken this journey, and now another journey with the film being released. Tell me, how does it feel to be Harper right now?
Except for the fear that I have being in front of audiences, it feels very good. I was in London shooting a film with Will right before the pandemic about the Eurovision Song Contest, and I was right on the cusp of this experience, really back and forth for many years, but this was a difficult period for me in London. Walking around London, going to get my Greg's sausage and my flat white as myself, finally, there was just so much joy. So.
Thank you.
You're applauding a Greg's sausage.
She just made 25,000 pounds right there.
Sponsorship.
Very sly, very sly.
I like to slip in a few products, as you know.
And what about you, Will? What has it been like after filming, going to various festivals and screenings, and having those journeys on top of the journey that you took with Harper earlier? Have you seen like a change in your relationship? Has it evolved? Has it deepened? Tell us about that journey.
Well, I did say to Hart, let's see, it started in Sundance, and then we were at the Telluride Film Festival, and then we were doing screenings in LA, then we went to Toronto, now we're here in London. Then from London, we will go back to LA, San Francisco, Austin, back to New York. So I said to her a couple weeks ago, you will hate me after this. I apologize ahead of time. So I'm soaking it in while she doesn't hate me. But it continues. It was surreal making the movie. It was surreal finally seeing what Josh had put together, because we had no idea if we had a movie there. And it continues to be surreal as we do all this in the most beautiful, loving way. So it's amazing, yeah.
How many times have you both watched the film since Josh put it together?
I want to say maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, yeah, 4 or 5 times, yeah.
I've got a question for you, Josh. I want you to talk me through the process of pulling something like this together, especially because you have to approach it as capturing footage in a constant state of movement while articulating both perspectives on screen. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. It starts, I guess, with conversations with my DP and the team, and really about how do we capture. It's like start from a story perspective and character perspective. And so one of the earliest conversations I had with my DP, Zoe White, who did a beautiful job shooting this, was I want to convey the sense of beauty and grace and softness. I often use the word soft about the way they treat one another and their friendship and their relationship. So things like that, made decisions like using soft old lenses that convey that look, using a Steadicam, which I don't traditionally do in my documentaries, instead of a handheld vibe. And so a lot of kind of conversations around that in terms of the production side, and then also just rigging the car, which is on one level very technical and at the same time very creative. So I knew I wanted, this image you see right here. This was the image that jumped out at me, obviously, for this film from the get-go. For a lot of reasons, you get to see where they are and the space they're in, but I love this. It's called a 2-shot. I know there's a lot of filmmakers in the audience who know that, but for those who don't, I love this kind of frame because it lets you decide when you want to edit the film, when you want to look at Harper versus Will, and you can kind of take in the whole story, because there's a lot happening in both of them at any given moment of the film, moments of growth and challenge and a question and answer, a response, a look. And so that was, I'm all over the place with this answer, but I think that was a big part of how to capture it in terms of the visual and the approach.
And what about the aspects of showing Harper's America? Yeah. Because definitely kind of the landscapes and the kind of aesthetics of it, it feels like we're seeing America through Harper's eyes.
That's exactly it. That was the goal. And so early conversations, I've known Will and Harper for years, even before making this, but when I started sitting down talking with both of them, but particularly Harper, who has done these trips hundreds of times, she often talked about like how she loved to go to these small towns. And also when she pulls off the side of the road, she doesn't go to the normal vista that, the government has decided this is the most beautiful spot. Whoever built the viewpoint, she likes to pull out these chairs, and find beauty in the mundane, beauty in the ugly, beauty in the small town. And so, we talked with Zoe again about figuring out how do we capture that? How do we make a parking lot of Walmart look the way Harper sees it? Because it is beautiful, and there's beauty all around us in often the places that we are not looking. So we worked really hard on capturing, as you beautifully put it, Harper's view of America.
That's really beautiful. One of the strongest undertones for me in the film is the simultaneous comfort and discomfort of celebrity. And you even articulated on screen that the experience would be different if you were alone, Harper. But what can't be denied is the power that community brings, and kinship is kinship. And there are moments that are incredibly warm. Have you engaged much with the wider trans community since going on this journey? And where are you now? And would you take the journey alone?
Oh, I've taken the journey. I drove back. And because of the trip, each trip across, I become more confident. And yes, I mean, I have trans friends and I have friends in the queer community, but I embrace it so much more than I did before. I think it wasn't because I wasn't trans or I wasn't queer, it was because I was afraid of being these things. So now I'm so unafraid of that, I've embraced it so much more. But yeah, crossing the country, again, I do point out, as a trans person, crossing the country with Will Ferrell is not normal.
A major A-list celebrity. Right? Wouldn't you say?
I was not going there, and I would not go there. No, it's and then a camera crew on top of it. So I have certain privileges and this sort of access that I don't think so many people have. So, but for me personally, crossing back, I've been back and forth twice. It's just been easier.
So in the development of the film, and this question is to you all, in the development of the film, was there a clear reason or kind of clear output that you wanted from this film? What do you want to achieve with this film? And was that envisaged in the development of the film, or was it something that came to fruition when you actually saw the final cut?
I almost think it would make us look too smart if we had a clear reason. You know what I mean? I think when Will and I think of projects to do, it's always sort of like, huh? Why not? And I think there's a little bit of that here that I don't want to move away from. I think we both like to do something difficult and weird.
Right.
And so that might have been one of the motivating forces. The other motivating force was that there's a lot of trans bills being introduced in legislation across America. Quite an explosive number, actually. And so I did think that maybe Will's audience, which is Talladega Nights, which is Anchorman, which is, those films, there may be some use in, crossing the country with someone like this.
What about you?
A-list celebrity.
And the Land of the Lost movie you made.
This was a long-running...
So that wasn't a winner, but...
This, by the way, just to give you a sense of the production, this A-list, what am I, B-list or C-list, was a daily conversation to the point where at one point Will was like, well, I don't know, compared to Kevin Hart, right? I'm similar. And Harper's like, no, Kevin Hart's, I don't think thinks you're an A-list. So Will then actually called Kevin Hart.
Who picked up his phone and said I was definitely C-list.
Yes, he did. Yeah. And Will made me cut that out. No, we did cut a lot out for time. We had 240 hours of footage. I've completely lost the question. Oh, the intent, the hopes for it, the intention. I mean, here's the one thing I guess we all did talk about, I remember, was just in terms of tone and hope for it was, this may sound weird, but we didn't want it to ever be a political film. Right? We knew there would be impact, to Harper's point.
Yeah.
And it, of course, will be brought into the political arena just given the nature of the subject matter. Yeah. But for me and for us, it was this is an incredibly personal human story, which, by the way, most political issues are. They affect human beings. So if we can put a face to it and people can engage in a story, then hopefully hearts and minds can change more through through a story, right, than anything else. So that was maybe a little bit of the conversation early on. I mean, even to the point when we were in Washington, D.C., we certainly could have gone and probably met with some politicians and presidents using Will's, what'd you call it in the film? Your moneymaker.
The moneymaker, yeah.
But yeah.
And quite simplistically, we just wanted to capture a conversation between two friends and just bring it down to that level that hopefully audience can just listen to me stumble my way through asking my dear friend, these questions that I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to ask the wrong way. And then she allows me to make those mistakes and encourages me to ask away. There's no wrong question, and we wanted to show that in an honest way.
I think you did. That's definitely conveyed in the film, and one of my biggest takeaways from the film. Aside from making Pringles the official road trip snack and cementing your love for Dunkin' Donuts, obviously, we also saw your journey from psychological acceptance but nervousness to comfort and kinship. On reflection, what were some of the highlights of the trip for you?
Well, I mean, every day there was a highlight. Not only we try to make each other laugh all the time. And, the highlights ranged from Harper showing us photos of herself on a unicycle, the way she used to get around Iowa City, only to be in front of her childhood house and have this young person come up on a unicycle. Insane. Yeah. And even though they didn't recognize me, but which we should have cut that out.
He's over it. He's totally over it. It's fine.
And then Harper gets on and rides this unicycle in heels.
Very poorly, I might add.
No, wonderfully.
Okay.
Between our chance encounter at the Grand Canyon with a retired therapist who then is trying to make amends for a situation she didn't feel like she knew how to handle, and Harper giving her comfort. Me getting to surprise Harper at a pool with my Speedo. So many highlights.
But to be clear, he packed that. I mean, right?
I packed that.
So it's clear to see that from taking this journey and obviously from the process after the film that kind of your relationships with each other is expanded from the filmmaking process. But could you talk a little bit about how it was at the very beginning working together in that working relationship, obviously having to do something that is potentially very scary, very fearful, and then having that vulnerability and knowing it's all going to be caught on camera? I can't imagine how complex that must be. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is how it all came about, I think, is important to kind of answer that question, which is it started, obviously, like you saw on screen with Harper, and then Harper sending the letter and Will having this idea, but it became it's a very kind of familial backstory, which is that I think Will was talking to his business partner at his production company, Jessica Elbaum, who's a producer on this, who happens to be married to Rafi Marmor, who I think is here somewhere, maybe not, our other producer. But Rafi makes documentaries. He's my producer. I've known him for 20 years. We've made 7 docs together, and he sort of felt like, oh, this is a great fit. And I also knew Will prior, because Will produced my first narrative feature, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, and I knew Harper prior through Kristen Wiig and other friends. And so to answer that kind of question, a starting place for us that was very helpful was we're very close actually already. I've never done a doc where I already knew my subjects, which it brings its own complications. But in terms of I think our conversations early on, I don't know if you guys, we talked a good amount about getting comfortable with the camera because, in fairness, Will's been on camera a ton, but really never as yourself. And Harper, when to give you a sense of how little she likes or is ever on camera, when I was trying to find footage and photos of her in Saturday Night Live, where she worked for 13 years and was the head writer, I found 2. And they were usually her like running out of the frame. So, you know, I think we did talk early on about getting comfortable, and I remember telling you both, the 3rd day I said. Yeah. It's sort of just...
Josh said, yeah, like it'll be strange at first, but by the 3rd day, you'll forget the cameras are there. And it's not that you totally forget they're there, but there's something about that 3rd day where you truly shed what's left of your inhibitions to just kind of get down to talking. Yeah.
To relax into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Harper?
Well, the intimacy part was not hard because we've been speaking the same language, Will and I. It was not hard for me and Will because we've been speaking the same language for 20-something years. And so I knew going into it that I had that as a backup. This is what I always, it's just that if I have this sitting here, even tonight, it's just so much more comfortable for me, so easy, because we do speak the same kind of comic language. The parts that were much more, confessional or intimate, that came naturally, but only after sort of the naturalness that we've already had sort of developed. So it wasn't that hard. We've had many serious conversations. We just didn't go into this area ever, obviously, because I hadn't transitioned until 3 years ago. So I don't know. It was easy to be natural pretty quickly, but to the camera point, yes, that took about 2 or 3 days.
I've got a question for you. So, actually, I've got a question for you all because I think that's going to be more interesting. So, is there anything that was shot in the film that didn't make it into the final cut that you wish had?
I mean, so there was 240 plus hours of footage when we finished the trip. So there's about, 238 hours of things. No, I guess for me, we started with a 5-hour cut, and I really liked it. I was like, this is pretty good. So you're welcome that we didn't just show 5 hours. But no, I mean, there was a lot of things that I loved. There's a lot of comedy that these two did. We drove by a lot of billboards. In America, we have lots of ads for lawyers, injury attorneys, and they called all of them. So
It's true.
a lot of singing. Will had a harmonica.
Yeah.
Oh, you might have noticed when he's eating something in the end credits off the dashboard. So Harper's sister gave her an Easter bunny, because we were there during Easter. They placed that on the dashboard and forgot about it, and it melted. And then they named it Puddle Bunny. And they would say good morning to Puddle Bunny every day. And then Will would also take a ceremonial finger dip and eat Puddle Bunny, which we finally told him he could get sick. Then I think he finally stopped doing it.
I ingested a lot of plastic off that dashboard. It's hard. I think Josh did such a wonderful job in terms of the edit and what became the final film. I don't know if we had necessarily things we wish were still in, but there are moments. There was a really poignant moment in the karaoke bar right after we've had that lovely discussion with Dana. She sings the most touching version of Boulevard of
Broken
Dreams by
Green Day song.
Green Day, and she just sings this song with such emotion and earnestness, and it was all I could do to keep from welling up. And here we are in Peoria, Illinois, the heartland, an area that you wouldn't possibly think has a lot of tolerance, and this bar was as accepting as anywhere we had been, and just a lovely place. And that's like, oh shoot, we don't have that in the film, but I think we're there a perfect amount of time. So you do have to make some sacrifices along the way, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, to echo what Will said, I feel like there's a lot of things that were wonderful and beautiful moments. My hometown, we went to my college bar where I spent most of my time being a very drunk student. We were there with an old friend of mine, and it just, again, it's like being in London now. It meant so much to me to come back to some of these places and be who I mean, there's not a lot of regret here, but just I wish I had been that person then that I am now. So that was, yeah, those scenes meant a lot to me. My hometown, I've gone back to my hometown since, and it always is special to me to walk around the way I should have walked around when I was, honestly, 12.
So my final question to all of you is, having shared these intimate and defining moments with each other, I'm interested to hear what your hopes are for each other for the future.
I would like Will to make better films.
Look, I think there's some people here who've liked my body of work. Some.
A few.
I would like Harper in the future to leave me alone.
I hope Josh works again.
Yeah, that's the biggest one. We hope Josh works again after this.
What about you, Josh?
I don't know if I can follow that. That's a great question. I will say, and she's probably annoyed at me for saying it, but I've said many times to Harper throughout this post-process with sharing this film, I've encouraged her to do her best to let the love in, because it's all, I know you all feel it, and I saw you give her that love when she walked out here, but I just hope she just continues to feel all the love that she deserves. And I think I feel the same way about Will. I've had the privilege of knowing him as you now got to see him, right? Because, most of the time you just know him from his films. And I'm just, I have such a love for him, for both of these people, that it was a gift that I got to express it in a film. But I just hope the same way that he continues to get all the love that he deserves, because he's put so much good out into the world. And we often sometimes, I think, take for granted comedians who give us joy and love throughout our whole lives and make our day-to-day a lot easier. And so I hope he feels that.
See, was that hard?
I was like, what is this bullshit? Oh my God. God, Josh.
And scene.
Josh, apparently Josh has a project with Will I don't know about, because he's pitching himself.
And on that note, I'm going to close.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.